Hello, I am Zinfogel. In this video, I will cover Tapu Bulu's legendary arena and how to defeat him by understanding his combat mechanics. Let's get started. Tapu Bulu is weak to flying and poison and alternates weaknesses throughout the fight. Most of his attacks are physically oriented, so you should bring your best physical tanks against him. Tapu Bulu's main gimmick is summoning Grassy Terrain. When Grassy Terrain is active, the power of Grass-type moves increases by 50%, and Pokémon restore a little bit of health when using Grass-type moves. These effects also benefit your team. Tapu Bulu resets Grassy Terrain when the battle starts, when he uses a sync move, and when one of his health bars is depleted. Tapu Bulu is very vulnerable to status conditions, in particular interferences, which include Trap, Confusion, and Flinch. If Tapu Bulu hits itself in Confusion, Grassy Terrain will not restore his health, and Flinch will force him to stop acting altogether. However, Tapu Bulu has a passive called Listen Interference Tree. This functions similarly to Cobaline's Listen Affliction. Whenever Tapu Bulu recovers from an interference, he gains 3 stages of resistance to it, until he becomes completely immune. Regular status conditions are not very effective against Tapu Bulu. He has Listen 8 for every status except Poison, which he has Listen Poison 10 for, but you might want to consider using Bad Poison to counter Grassy Terrain recovery anyway. Throughout the battle, Tapu Bulu raises his attack, defense, and accuracy. At the very end of the fight, Tapu Bulu will also raise his evasion. At a minimum, you want to debuff Tapu Bulu's attack to facilitate things for your tanks. My recommended strategy is first debuffing Tapu Bulu and bringing a second team with a strong flying or poison type striker to defeat him, as is the standard for Legendary Arena. However, given Tapu Bulu thrives under Grassy Terrain, you should consider doing your best to prevent him from attacking while this field effect is active. Tech units who specialize in Confusion, Flinch, or Trap are very useful. Volkner and Bianca can also override Grassy Terrain, and it's a viable approach to battling Tapu Bulu. As with all legendary arenas, you can also sleep chain Tapu Bulu because he has Listen Sleep 8. I won't cover this approach, but if you are interested, you can check my Ask Self Legendary Arena tutorial at the corner of the video, because all the sleep chaining principles still apply for Tapu Bulu. The most important aspect to building your team is choosing a good tank. Tapu Bulu is quite strong, and if you are unprepared, he will explode your Pokémon with Grassy Terrain boosted wood hammers. I believe Dawn is the best tank you can use against Tapu Bulu. She can drain Tapu Bulu's attack with Power Siphon, and with X Defense All, she can protect the party from his AoE damage. As a Grass-type sync pair, Torterra benefits from Grassy Terrain, and Dawn can fully restore someone's HP once throughout the fight. Skyla, as usual, is a fantastic choice for Legendary Arena. She's particularly effective for Tapu Bulu thanks to her defense buffs, and she can deal super effective damage with her flying-type attacks. Rosa happens to be a great free-to-play tank for Tapu Bulu, especially if you had the chance to raise her to 6-star EX. She can keep herself healthy with Giga Drain under Grassy Terrain. Because she lacks defensive buffs, she pairs very well alongside Skyla to form a nearly unbreakable defensive core. Signasud Leaf, much like Rosa, tanks Tapu Bulu well thanks to the constant recovery from Grassy Terrain. She deals good damage and comprises bad poison and defensive debuffs. Signasud Blue tanks Tapu Bulu by virtue of his titanic bulk and provides omnibuffing to fill any gaps in your team composition. As long as your tank can buff defense and has some means of recovery, they should tank Tapu Bulu comfortably. If you are having trouble, you should consider giving your tank the Grass Guard Loki skill, because Tapu Bulu's highest damage comes from Grassy Terrain boosted attacks. The most effective way of damaging Tapu Bulu is by taking advantage of his flying type weakness, because it lasts the longest throughout his encounter. There aren't any great free-to-play flying type strikers, but Skyla can unironically deal great damage with offensive investment. Poison type trainers like Koga and Plumeria also do well when Tapu Bulu changes weakness to poison. Lastly, do consider Grass-type strikers, as they can abuse Grassy Terrain to deliver powerful blows. Given Tapu Bulu's vulnerability to interferences, tech simpers do really well against him. However, you should look into techs who can do more than just inflicting status, because Tapu Bulu will eventually become immune to them. 2-5 Plumeria is a great flincher thanks to a Smog Staggering 4. She does great damage to Tapu Bulu when he becomes weak to poison as well. Skyla, outside of all the defensive benefits she provides, can also flinch Tapu Bulu with Ghost Staggering 1 on her 3-5 grid. Will is capable of inflicting confusion and flinch for a couple sources of disruption. Satu also provides additional offense after stacking buffs for store power. Tech Alakazam is a personal favorite of mine. He performs similarly to Will, but with the added perk of regenerating health and giving that regeneration to its partners with X regen. Licia can use Defog to eliminate grassy terrain. Defog also lowers Tapu Bulu's evasion to help land inaccurate moves more easily. Twister also has a chance to flinch Tapu Bulu to keep him in check. Last but not least, Bongler is an excellent and reliable flincher thanks to Thunderfang. Bongler can also raise the party's accuracy with his terrain move, and he can override grassy terrain with electric terrain. Here are some good team archetypes to take on Tapu Bulu derived from the principles we talked about. I normally don't like handing out solutions, but you can pause the video and use this as a baseline to derive your own strategy. Okay, let's get this show rolling. For this demonstration, I am going to do a run with more accessible units. Unfortunately, most of my units have 4-star potential as a minimum, but I am not running any gears to make up the offensive difference, alright? The first step of battling Tapu Bulu is debuffing him, specifically his attack stat, that will make things a lot easier in the long run. And I am choosing to do this through Venom Drench, because it drops attack, special attack and speed by 1 stage per use. But the problem is that Venom Drench can only connect when the target is poisoned or badly poisoned, and Janine herself has awful chances of poisoning. So I am bringing Lucy as my poison applicator of choice, because she comprises trap and bad poison on one team slot, and that residual damage will whittle down Tapu Bulu very nicely while Janine does her job. But we could have a problem here if you don't have Lucy. If that is the case, you can bring Koga to bad poison instead, and Viola to do some trapping and tanking, a sort of replicate the role that Lucy does. But for my strat, I want to save Koga for later. I am going to use him as my DPS for a second Hellbar, so if you don't have a better striker to use than Koga, then you will have to find workarounds. But the goal here is simple: whittle down Tapu Bulu to below 50% health, so we can get a friendlier AI script and also get our full stack of Venom Drench debuffs, and ultimately, if set up right, we can get some crazy damage going with Trap and Bad Poison and have a nice head start for the next team. And here is the second team. Rosa has a 1-5 grid for Paraflux 5, so she can Giga Drain a little bit more health. And you could also grid her for Energy Ball on a roll 1 to score more special defense drops. Koga is my main DPS. He capitalizes from Tapu Bulu's weakness change to poison at the second Hellbar, and he's only gridded for 1-5 for Venoshock Tiles, Venoshock MGR and Trainer Move NPR, so he can max his critical hit rate. And Misty doesn't have a grid, she's only here for special defense buffs and regeneration, but this is questionable, because throughout the whole tutorial I was hammering that you need defense buffs to tank Tapu Bulu, but I don't want to use Skyla yet. I want to save her for a Teal Hellbar in case things go dicey, but Rosa, Koga and Skyla have very realistic chances of finishing the battle. But the reason I wanted you to push Tapu Bulu down to 50% HP at the first Hellbar is because he starts using special attacks, which is strange because it means that if we buff Rosa's special defense, then she can tank Tapu Bulu very comfortably, and I wanted Rosa to tank her best at this stage, because we don't have a weakness and Koga is going to struggle a little bit to get through the remainder of this Hellbar, even though we do have some residual damage from Poison and Trap. But I set it up this way to make up the disparity if you don't have a 6-star EX Rosa, because she will have issues tanking Tapu Bulu if she doesn't have the full 6-star EX investment, and when she can tank a special defense instead of physical defense, then she will do a lot more comfortably. And by the point we start stacking sync buffs, then Rosa can gain a lot more health and make up the lacking defense otherwise. But you could be trying Sky instead. I think that will be a little easier, because then Koga could also tank Tapu Bulu's sync move a lot better. But that's your prerogative. So the whole point here is getting to the second health bar. When this happens, when we get this health transition, Tapu Bulu removes status conditions, so you have to reapply Bad Poison. We didn't have to worry about that on the first health bar because we preset Poison from Lucy, but Koga depends entirely on Poison to deal damage. Venoshock doubles in power when the target is Poison, and Koga's Sync also doubles in power when the target is Poison as well, so he needs Poison applied for him to deal damage. But once we have the buffs going, it's just a regular encounter, just deal damage, crit your Syncs if you get lucky, and just explode Tapu Bulu with a very strong Sync move. And the goal here is just depleting the second health bar, you don't need to do more than that. So once we get a sync going and push him down to 50% HP, you have to reapply Bad Poison again, but as long as you get to the tier health bar, then our goal is done. Here I stopped dealing damage by choice, so I can show that the tier team can finish this health bar by itself, but typically you would want to deal as much damage as possible with Koga, and make it easier for the last team to finish off Tapu Bulu. Last but not least, here we have Skyla, Torchic, and Nanu. And Skyla can admittedly do the whole battle by herself, but I wanted to save her as a backup, just to close any mishaps from the Koga team. And Skyla only has a 1-5 grid for Aerial Ace, she's going to unironically DPS here, and Take Flight NPR. This is mostly to max her speed and defense. Speed specifically so she can boost her inertia. Skyla has inertia innately integrated, so the higher her speed, the higher her sync damage, and the defense buffs will also help Nano survive because he has to soak some hits for Skyla. Because now we have to deal with Tapu Bulu's Woodhammer, which is impossible to tank, so we need to mid-shield that. And Potion NPR is a given. Torchic is here for some offensive buffs, and Nano is going to do a couple very important roles. He's going to Screech to drop Tapu Bulu's defense, and he's also going to flinch him to keep him in check and allow Torchic to survive. So Nano is actually the most reliable flincher in the game. When he crits, he has a 64% chance of flinching the target, so that will buy us some precious time to get our buffs going, and Flinch is a very potent tool for Tapu Bulu that we have not employed yet. So Tapu Bulu starts with no listen flinch, so he's totally vulnerable to flinch, and that will help us get more time for Skyla. But yeah, check out the damage, that will just explode just about any unit that's not named Dawn, and we just need to watch out. So the whole point here is just deal as much damage as possible with Skyla, get it to sinks, and eventually after we get to the next phase of the battle, Tapu Bulu will start using Woodhammer again, so you need Nano to tank that. Because not even Skyla can survive that, even at max defense. So we are tanking with Nano, allowing him to do some evasion tanking with his turn move, and also using Potion on him so he can tank that second Woodhammer. And from this point, Skyla should finish the job, because she still has some decent defense to tank any other attacks from Tapu Bulu. And with the offensive investment, she can aerial ace to her leisure after dropping Tapu Bulu's defense with Screech. So there you have it. Tapu Bulu down with accessible units. Now, I want to quickly show another battle with a more conventional team structure, but I only want to show a concept here, which is Flinch Chaining. The fact that Tapu Bulu doesn't start with any flinch resistance means that he's extremely vulnerable to flinching, and if we time it right, just abusing it as much as possible, we can completely stun lock Tapu Bulu and prevent him from damaging the party altogether. So I just buff with the whole party. This is a standard Skyla grid, and Blue has Harry 5, so he gets a really chunky multiplier from flinching. And this is a technique called machine gunning. Machine gunning happens when you use one action with one specific character, and that just maximizes your DPS, because in theory this specific character has the best damage potential out of your entire party. So the deal here is that when Tapu Bulu transitions, he clears the status, he clears Flinch, but he doesn't activate Listen Interference, so that means that when we flinch him again at this health bar, he didn't get any resistance to it, so he's still at Listen Flinch 0, and we can keep spamming Hurricane and deal some really chunky damage, and just continue that. So that is a really neat trick that you can do for these battles. You can flinch and take advantage of the health transition to clear the flinch without activating the resistance increase that Tapu Bulu normally gets from Listen Interference, and just keep chaining flinches that way, which is a useful trick for sleep and other sort of status. But yeah, that's about everything I can say about Tapu Bulu. Hope this video helps. As usual, my infinite thanks for your continued support. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.